All right, hello everyone. This is Jordan Saunders with the Association of Information Technology Professionals at San Diego State University chapter, and I'm here with Dylan Steele. He's a senior business analyst at the Commonwealth Bank in Sydney, Australia. How are you doing today, Dylan?
You're doing well, Jordan.
It's a pleasure to have you. We're looking forward to talk to you. The purpose of this call is going to be to give our members and San Diego State students a little bit of insight into what it takes to be a business analyst / systems analyst and a project manager. How does that sound?
Sounds invigorating.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to talk to you about this because we've been discussing doing this for a little bit, and I'm sure that the students will get a lot of value out of it. So with that said, Dylan, if you need to say anything else about introducing yourself, go ahead and let us know how your career path led you to becoming a business analyst.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for doing this. This is really a good thing. A lot of insights definitely to get from people that are on the ground and doing it. As for me, I actually kind of fell into my role because I was at University of Sydney doing a master's in project management, and that took really into consideration not only kind of your more IT related projects, which is more related to a business analyst, system analyst, but also it took into consideration like mining, construction, just all up project management. And so during that time, one of the key streams of study was around more iterative type of projects, which is more commonly known as an agile project, which is widely used in IT. However, a lot of companies are still trying to apply a more waterfall type of project delivery schema. So from doing that study, I learned about requirements gathering, but it was more from a kind of a higher level point of view. It wasn't from more of a technical kind of in-depth point of view. But I was familiar with the processes involved, and as a business analyst, you're often wearing a project manager hat in a lot of ways. So when I went up and interviewed for the role, I knew my stuff. I was familiar with a lot of the project lingo, and I was able to wrap my mind around what they were trying to accomplish in a pretty quick way. I mean, really right there on the spot during the interview. And so that's kind of how I fell into it. A lot of the people I work with, however, they study at this university called the University of Technology Sydney, where it'd be more similar to what you and you guys are doing at San Diego, and also within your club. And I can personally attest that those are the types of programs that companies are really are targeting, just people that have both that business sense and also that information system sense.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that pretty much is how I got into the role that I'm at now.
Yeah, I definitely would agree that it seems like businesses are looking for people that can bridge the gap between business and technology, and a lot of people in our majors, management information systems, they ending up in these analyst roles or eventually heading to the project manager role as well, just because we're all jacks of all trades, so to speak, and do a pretty good job of bridging the gap. And we're not as theoretical as the computer science and engineering types, but we can definitely wear many hats. So I would agree that we're definitely well suited.
Yeah, that's correct. So really, in the role, and the reason why they're so important is because you have you have the business, and it could be any business. It could be a manufacturing firm, it could be a bank, it could be an aeronautical engineering company. The knowledge that the people that work in the business and also work in the actual creation, more the manufacturing side, they have so much niche knowledge they need to have on their projects and how their businesses work. But then just because it's a competitive environment, companies, they rely more and more on information technology to effectively manage their processes, both globally, but also internally, just to streamline a lot of information to ultimately impact, like turnaround times and speed to market, customer satisfaction, etc. And you can attend if you follow finance or anything, you can attend a shareholder meeting, and you'll hear a lot about the CFOs and the CEOs talking about various technology CapEx or POPEX initiatives that they have going on. And when they talk about those are often the IT projects that are really being ran by those ground level business and system analysts. So it's huge in the business world, and it's only increasing. So when you try and marry up the requirements of a really niche business to really kind of conceptual, theoretical, extremely technical gadgets and information systems, it requires someone who can quickly get in there and both see the big picture on how it all comes together, but then easily drill right down into the details and quickly translate a requirement from the business into functionally what that's going to mean. And so typically the type of person who excels in that type of role is someone who naturally is really inquisitive and investigative by nature. Because there's so many people and there's a lot of complex information out there to solve a problem, one person's not going to know everything. That's just the first thing that you need to understand once you're in there. You're not going to know everything, and so you need to quickly develop a skill to be able to identify who might know what it is that you need to know, even if it's a complete stranger. Often, what I do every day, and what a lot of people do, is you go into these meetings, and if there's a question that needs to be answered that no one knows, you need to at least figure out a team or a name who would know that information, and then you go back and then you look the person up, and then you just give them a call or send them an email. And so as you can imagine, it's sometimes a bit difficult because you get these kind of parallel universes going where someone knows something, but it's very much in their own jargon, and you understand it in a different way, but you have your own jargon. And so you both have conversations, and sometimes it's grueling, sometimes it takes a while, but you just got to be persistent until you eventually come to an understanding of what it is you guys both need and what it is you guys both understand.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me interrupt you there and ask you. I'm glad that you mentioned interacting with people and your day-to-day work, because that's a natural segue into my first question for you, which is what's a typical day at work like for you? Because there's plenty of people can Google all this information and get job descriptions, but we all know that the general job description that's for your position it's usually not like what your day-to-day work is going to be. So if you could provide a little bit of insight into what to expect, or not, I know every company is going to be a little bit different, but what's your day-to-day work life like?
Yeah, so it's like you said, it probably varies company to company, project to project, but look, usually it consists of you go in and first thing that you look at is you look at your diary, usually, because as a business analyst, your life pretty much revolves around meetings. You do need to find time to go back and do a bit of investigative work, and to also get in and actually analyze a document or do an Excel spreadsheet, for example, or put together a requirements delivery plan, or put together test case scenarios. Right, those are probably more the it's more getting into the hard sort of stuff that you do, and what would be taught at the universities, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do have to do a lot of that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's really all about going in and making sure you show up to your meetings, making sure that the right people are in those meetings, and chasing down people, making sure that there's proper meeting minutes taken, making sure that decisions are documented, and ultimately just holding people accountable for things that they said they were going to go look at, things that they said they were going to go do. So it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of meetings, and then in the middle of all of that, it's you're doing more. You're putting together like data flow diagrams. You're putting together delivery plans. You're writing requirements. So it's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so I was going to jokingly say, so it's a lot of meetings, a lot of work in Microsoft Office, and a lot of emailing.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Cool. So the second question I have for you is, in your opinion, what kinds of personality traits and skills do people possess that are best suited to becoming business analysts and project managers? You touched on it a little bit, but if you could expand upon it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I did kind of get into that a little bit, but yeah, this one's really a really good question to me, because I do think that there are certain personality types that that may just find it a bit more natural to be a good business analyst and also a good project manager. I think that the two are a bit mutually exclusive as well, because there's different types of different types of skill sets that are both really important, but maybe more applicable to a project manager and maybe more applicable to kind of an in the details sort of business analyst. So really the best type of people, just from the get-go, it's like I said, someone just very inquisitive, and someone who just yearns to completely solve a problem and understand how something works from a start to finish point of view. I know that might sound a little bit ubiquitous, but I guess to put that into a bit of context, right? Just relate it to something that we've recently looked at work. So we've had this issue where the Treasury Department weren't seeing some information correctly, and from that piece of information that they're getting, it passes through probably about like 5 different systems in a series of extraction and loading processes. So for all the systems type of guys that are listening to this, they'd totally be understanding what we're talking about here. But basically what happens is the information gets kind of sliced and diced in a bunch of different ways, right? And some people that maybe that are maybe better suited for other types of roles, they might be more interested specifically in their one system or what they do with that information, and then that's it, right? They're just interested in that one piece. They don't care about where it comes from, or vice versa. They don't care where it goes. They just care about what they do with that information, how they interact with it, and what it means to them, which is fair enough. You need those types of people. A business, slash systems analyst, on the other hand, they are more interested in the process. They're more interested in how that information gets in there, where the person gets the information in the first place. They're interested in which systems it interacts with. They're interested in what could go wrong along the way so that they can identify the risks. They're not going to allow a hurdle like someone not knowing a piece of information. They're not going to allow a hurdle like time or someone being unavailable to answer a question stop them. They're going to do whatever it takes, however long it takes, in order to fully figure out, exactly what is happening with a particular, in that instance, like a data flow, for example.
Yeah. So it sounds like you need to have a very good eye for detail, and you need to have the ability to see the big picture. Would that be accurate?
That's exactly it. And you need to be able to switch in and out of that mindset very quickly.
Another thing that the AITP has been talking about as one of the skill sets that we need to improve are our soft skills. So what kind of soft skills do you use on a regular basis?
The big thing here is really it's influencing people. I was recently sat on a panel at University of Sydney, and we were talking about similar questions, and we were talking about what it is that you primarily take from a postgraduate education and apply into the workforce. And that was a really, really big one for a lot of the people in the panel, including myself, is people influencing. As a business analyst, you're working with a bunch of different types of people with different agendas. On one hand, you're working with your stakeholders, who would be the business. They'd ultimately be the end users, and they just want to make sure that you're going to deliver something to them that's going to work and is going to be a nice experience for them, which is fair enough. That's it. But sometimes what they want might not be technically feasible, or it might be extremely expensive what they're asking for. So in many cases, you find yourself being the middleman between the developers who actually create the system and the business who want it. And so you need to really have great diplomatic skills and be a very good communicator, and be really good at judging people and having that emotional intelligence to understand what makes certain people tick, so that you can adjust your communication approach based on an individualistic basis.
Yeah, from what I've gathered, people skills are really important in the business world, and for those of us who weren't born with the most social skills or emotional intelligence, I'd probably say it sounds like a corny title for a book, but it's an all-time classic to read: How to Win Friends and Influence People. Do you have any other books that you would recommend to people that want to work on their social skills?
No, not any books per se. When it comes to that topic, though, I think that that everyone has the ability, right, everyone has the ability to develop and harness that skill. I tend to not believe that there's one personality type or one particular way that will allow you to work well with people to ultimately get your desired outcome. I think that it's all about like knowing yourself and being confident with who you are and your own personality type, and using and reading those books. It's a really great thing. If I were to recommend anything to read, I would recommend just seriously go onto Google and just put in emotional intelligence, and there'll be books, there'll be articles, there'll be so much that'll come up just on that topic alone. There's a lot of great research that's out there. During my postgrad coursework, I had to do a lot of papers on emotional intelligence. I can't cite any of the authors off the top, but that's why I say just go and look it up and just read about it. It's really interesting, good stuff, and I think all personality types will get something out of it, and over time and through just exposure and working and gaining the confidence to interact with people, the skills that you need to successfully drive good people outcomes will just come naturally, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good idea to study some theory or what people have found work, and then actually you gotta get off your butt and actually get out there and practice it, because you can't just learn everything from a book. So it's definitely important to involve yourself in, from our perspective, in student organizations and local meetups if possible, and try to just get yourself out there and work on your social skills. So thanks for that.
No worries.
All right, the next question I have for you is, do you have any, this is again in a joking tone, do you have any secret tips for standing out or being recognized as an awesome analyst or manager? So basically, what are your tips for standing out in the workplace?
Yeah, probably the number one thing is just being dependable. I've seen people who maybe aren't the most knowledgeable, but if you give them something to do and they understand what it is they need to do, you can depend on them, right? And so that's just really, really key. And so that's a skill set all on its own. It comes down to like time management and prioritization and delegation. Because say if you're that person who's really, really smart and you want to have a lot of control, right? You'll wind up taking on too much because you want to own everything. You want to have your hands in everything because you know that you probably know the most, or you think you know the most about everything that's going on. Well, at the end of the day, you're not going to be that dependable because you're not possibly going to be able to do everything that you've taken on. And so people might lose a bit of respect for you because, they can't rely on you to do something that you said you would do, which is fair enough. And then after the dependability, I think the next thing is just knowledge. So just really, and that in itself takes a lot of time as well. You need to put the time into reading a functional spec, reading a document, Googling articles about how a particular business works. As a business analyst, it often really helps to really understand the business that you're working in and how that business makes money, and who their competitors are, and how the marketplace in general works. Because ultimately you'll be able to understand your stakeholders' requirements a lot better, and you'll also be able to maintain that detailed requirement traceability back to a high level business objective. And I guess the third thing that would make a business systems analyst stand out would, and I guess it kind of goes along with knowledge, but I think that just someone who doesn't silo themselves into a particular area. For example, I think I mentioned that a little bit before. You get some people who just know one particular system, one cog in the series of gears and shafts and moving parts, right, of a machine. Someone who's not afraid to wear another hat, gain more knowledge, step outside of that of what they normally are experts of, and not be afraid to expose themselves to a bit of naivete at times, because like I said, not everyone knows everything. You got to start somewhere. So if you're willing to kind of go into an unfamiliar situation and it's outside of your lane, people really do. They recognize that and they really respect that, especially if you make a real effort and you eventually grasp these new concepts that normally, as a business or systems analyst, you wouldn't need to know.
I'm glad that you mentioned dependability, because that's something I think I need to work on, is to realize that you can't do everything by yourself, and being dependable is a lot more important than getting things your way all the time or having everything be exactly how you think it should be. So it's like you have to learn to be to balance those things out. And so you have dependability, learning how to do your due diligence, and flexibility. So I'm really glad you mentioned those things, because those are things I haven't really thought of.
And being funny and not taking yourself too seriously is another important thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the next question is, so we have a systems analysis class, and it's MIS 306. We learn about things such as use cases, DFDs, Gantt charts, and other informational products that you probably create on a regular basis. So how often how often are you creating and or using these?
Yeah, so it depends on the phase of the project that you're in. So so I guess take a typical IT project delivery flow. The typical steps: the analyze, design, build, test, release. Right. Even if you're using Agile, those steps are very true anyway. So when you're going through a phasal transition, you might find yourself doing more planning work. So therefore, you're going to be working with Gantt charts more. When you're in the analyze, especially, and also design phases, you'll be finding that you're having to convey more information and communicate exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Or if you're in like the project I'm on, where you're doing a technological change project, doing a lot of like current state and future state type of diagrams. So during those bits, you'd be working on and developing, a data flow diagram, or a systems context diagram. And then once you get, and then later on once you get into the testing, kind of the release phases, and you're going through the defect resolution, or you're having to resolve incidents, God forbid, after you release. Often you're going back to those documents that were created in those earlier phases, and maybe making changes, or having just to consult them to see exactly what it was the design or the requirement was meant to accomplish. So as data flow diagrams, Gantt charts, and then what was the other one that you were asking about?
Use cases. I think you may have referred to them as test cases.
So that's so those are that's more like you start developing those just right before test, and as you roll into the test phase. You're just really, everyone has their own way of doing it. What I have often seen, what I personally do, is I use some pretty, and it can be as complex as you really want it, but it doesn't really have to be that complex. But a lot of people just use Excel and will develop use cases within Excel. Key thing with use cases, not so much about how nice it looks, but it's more about, you could really, from what I've seen, a really detailed and involved good use case list could be written on the back of a napkin, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What's most important about good use case development is getting all of the important scenarios and having them prioritized correctly, as opposed to having them kind of like look pretty, Yeah. The latter is definitely an important part of the job, especially when it comes to communicating and integrating with your testers. Like if you develop really good use cases and it's conveyed and it looks nice and it's more understandable, your testers are going to just naturally have a bit more respect and be more compliant and be more willing to work harder for you, because they know that you've put the hard work in as well.
That makes sense. One thing we really learned was the importance of detailed and dumbed down use cases, because in a lot of cases, the people looking at those use cases aren't necessarily the most technical, or they're the decision makers that don't specialize in what you specialize. So they really need to be dumbed down, and that all makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's an important component I actually failed to mention, was validating your use cases in a way that makes sense to the business. I mentioned the testers, so a use case that it's well written and can be understood by both the business but also by your testers.
Absolutely. All right, the final question we have for you, and I heard this is kind of controversial one. Is it necessary to be an analyst before becoming a project manager, in your opinion, and why or why not?
You know what? I don't think that there is. Having said that, I did a master's in project management, and I didn't study an information systems degree undergrad. And at Sydney University, they're in the engineering and IT faculty. They're really, really huge on this kind of new idea that seems to be taking shape in the business world, that that project management is its own discipline in its own right, and therefore a young person can go and study project management undergrad and postgrad and go and have a career in project management. So I think I've seen it happen. I have some people that I graduated from a master's degree course with, and they're working for project management consulting firms. And four other guys that I graduated with, they're working for this project management consulting firm, consulting the bank on the project that I work on. So it's kind of fun, we saw each other and we're like, whoa, hey, what are you doing here? And they're doing it. They're doing a career in project management, and they don't have a business or systems analyst background. Yeah. And there's also like project management office work, like they usually businesses, they have a PMO, and it's usually people with more project knowledge, and they'll come into a project and they'll just manage more of the logistical side of things. So they'll keep track of the costs. They'll keep track of timelines, that sort of thing. However, from what I've seen, and maybe it differs company to company, the project management offices don't really seen how they're not really involved in the details, and they're not really involved in what's being delivered. They often don't have quite an understanding of what it is the project is accomplishing, so they can't really weigh in when it comes to quality. But definitely they have a say, and they present their recommendations to management when it comes to cost and time.
So,
yeah.
Would you say that it's necessary to have a master's degree if you wanted to get into project management straight out of school, or are there people that actually have just bachelor's degrees?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. My experience, I've only seen those guys that came out of that master's degree program, but that's just because that's what I did. And so that's all I kind of know. I know that there is a bachelor's degree program in project management, and I think, yeah, absolutely, the guys coming out of that degree program would be able to go and get into consulting work, or go and work in a PMO. But I think it's this one. I think it's personality. For me. I would personally rather go and kind of be a person on the ground in project delivery, and know what it's like being in the details from a business and systems analyst point of view, just because of the knowledge that you gain from dealing with all of the different types of teams and people involved in a project from an end-to-end point of view. I think having that knowledge is really important once you do jump up and go into more project management, because often as a project management in the more of the delivery sort of stream, you're often in the details, and you're often having to prioritize and manage cost estimates for certain pieces of work, or if there's a change request, for example, and a delivery manager comes back to you and says, oh, yeah, well, it's going to be like $200,000 to implement this change, and it's going to impact, X, Y, and Z, and it's going to take, 30 days, etc. Someone who had been in the details and had a bit of work or some exposure to that particular solution that delivery manager is talking about, you might be able to challenge an estimate or question assumptions a little bit more, and that's absolutely necessary if you're talking about controlling time costs. But then the third, sometimes most important component is the quality. So as someone who's actually been on the ground and knows what a quality solution versus a non-quality solution looks like, you'd have the tools, you'd have the knowledge to be able to control the quality a bit more as a project manager.
That's definitely some food for thought, because a good analogy for that is having a CEO. Would you rather have a CEO that started in the mailroom and worked his or her way up and, gained a bunch of experience in the process, or somebody that just graduated this is not knocking master's programs at all, but just somebody that is fresh out of school and is in an executive position right away? I would say that I'd rather be the executive that worked my way up. And that's definitely good food for thought, what kind of professional an individual wants to be.
Yep.
All right, well, that's all we have for you, Dylan. I definitely want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
Bye.